The execution of Roger Mortimer, 1st Earl of March, a turning point in English medieval history. Introduction. The execution of Roger Mortimer, 1st Earl of March, on the 29th of November, 1330, marked a dramatic and pivotal event in English history. Mortimer's rise to power, orchestrated through his alliance with Queen Isabella, reshaped the kingdom during a turbulent period. Together, they orchestrated the deposition of Edward II in 1327, seizing control of the government during the regency of Edward III. However, Mortimer's regency soon drew criticism for its overreach and alleged tyranny, culminating in his downfall. His execution, ordered by Edward III, was not merely the punishment of a traitor but a significant turning point that restored royal authority and shaped the trajectory of the English monarchy. Let's examine Mortimer's life, from his beginnings as a marcher lord to his tenure as the most powerful man in England. We shall examine his alliance with Isabella, their regency, and the events leading to his dramatic fall, situating these developments within the broader political, social, and international contexts of the 14th century. The early life of Roger Mortimer, a marcher lord's rise. Roger Mortimer was born in 1287 into a prominent marcher family tasked with defending the Anglo-Welsh frontier. The Mortimers were among the most influential of the marcher lords, whose strategic holdings in the Welsh borderlands made them indispensable to the crown. This upbringing on the volatile frontier shaped Roger's character, teaching him the importance of military strength, strategic alliances, and adaptability. At the age of 17, Roger inherited the title of Baron Mortimer of Wigmore after the death of his father, Edmund Mortimer. His marriage to Joan de Geneville, a wealthy heiress with extensive estates in England and Ireland, significantly augmented his wealth and influence. By the early 14th century, Mortimer had emerged as a key player in Edward II's campaigns in Wales and Scotland, earning distinction for his martial prowess and leadership. The challenges of Edward II's reign. Edward II's reign, 1307 to 1327, was marked by mismanagement, political instability, and favoritism. His reliance on unpopular courtiers, such as Piers Gaveston and later Hugh Despenser the Younger, alienated many of the kingdom's leading nobles. Edward's inability to manage these tensions resulted in deep fractures within the political elite. Piers Gaveston's arrogance and monopolization of royal patronage earned him the enmity of the barons, leading to his execution in 1312. However, Edward's favoritism toward the Despensers proved even more damaging. The Despensers' growing influence, particularly in the Welsh marches, directly threatened Mortimer's position. Hugh Despenser the Younger's efforts to consolidate power in the region created a bitter rivalry between the Mortimers and the Despensers. Mortimer's role in the Despenser War. By the early 1320s, Mortimer had emerged as one of the most vocal opponents of the Despensers. In 1321, he joined forces with other disgruntled barons in a rebellion against Edward II, known as the Despenser War. The rebels initially succeeded in forcing the king to exile the Despensers, but Edward soon regained the upper hand. In 1322, Edward crushed the rebellion at the Battle of Boroughbridge, capturing Mortimer and imprisoning him in the Tower of London. Mortimer's dramatic escape from the Tower in 1323 was a testament to his resourcefulness and the loyalty of his supporters. Fleeing to France, he began rebuilding his political network, setting the stage for his eventual return to power. The formation of the alliance with Queen Isabella. In France, Mortimer found an unexpected ally in Queen Isabella. The daughter of King Philip IV of France, Isabella was a formidable political figure in her own right. Her marriage to Edward II, initially a diplomatic triumph, had soured due to Edward's neglect and his dependence on the Despensers. By 1325, Isabella had grown openly hostile to her husband, refusing to return to England after a diplomatic mission to France. Mortimer and Isabella's partnership was both pragmatic and personal. While chroniclers of the time accused them of an adulterous affair, their alliance was primarily political. Isabella provided legitimacy and royal connections, while Mortimer contributed military expertise and a network of exiled nobles. Their shared grievances against Edward II and the Despensers united them in a common cause: the invasion of England and Edward II's fall. In September 1326, Mortimer and Isabella launched an invasion of England. Landing in Suffolk with a small force of mercenaries, they capitalized on widespread discontent with Edward II's rule. The campaign was swift and decisive. Edward's support evaporated as nobles and towns defected to Isabella and Mortimer. By November, Edward was captured, and the Despensers were executed in a grisly display of justice. Edward II was formally deposed in January 1327, and his 14-year-old son was crowned Edward III. However, real power rested with Isabella and Mortimer, who governed as regents. Their success marked the first time in English history that a sitting king was deposed by his own subjects. The regency of Isabella and Mortimer. Mortimer's regency was initially seen as a necessary corrective to Edward II's disastrous reign. However, his governance soon attracted criticism. In 1328, he was granted the title of Earl of March, further consolidating his power. His accumulation of wealth and influence alienated many of the nobles who had supported him during the invasion. One of the most controversial aspects of the regency was the fate of Edward II. Officially, the former king died in Berkeley Castle in September 1327, reportedly of natural causes. However, rumors of foul play, alleging that Edward was murdered on Mortimer's orders, quickly spread. The apocryphal tale of Edward's death by a red-hot poker became infamous, further tarnishing Mortimer's reputation. Mortimer's foreign policy also drew ire. The Treaty of Northampton, 1328, which recognized Scotland's independence under Robert the Bruce, ended years of costly war but was widely perceived as a humiliating concession. Domestically, Mortimer's heavy-handed approach to dissent and his enrichment of his allies led to growing discontent. Social and economic context. The success of Mortimer and Isabella's invasion was rooted not only in political discontent but also in broader social and economic factors. Edward II's reign had seen a series of crises, including poor harvests, inflation, and military failures. These hardships created a fertile ground for rebellion, as both nobles and commoners sought an alternative to Edward's ineffective rule. Mortimer's regency, however, failed to address these underlying issues. His focus on consolidating power and wealth alienated key factions within the nobility, while the broader population saw little relief from economic pressures. The Nottingham coup, Edward III's assertion of authority. By 1330, Edward III had grown increasingly resentful of Mortimer's dominance. Although nominally king, Edward was effectively sidelined in governance. Determined to assert his authority, Edward began plotting Mortimer's removal. The opportunity came during a parliament held at Nottingham Castle in October 1330. Mortimer and Isabella, unaware of the plot against them, were residing at the castle. On the night of the 19th of October, Edward and a group of loyal supporters infiltrated the castle through a secret passage. Mortimer was arrested in a dramatic confrontation, marking the end of his regency. The trial and execution of Roger Mortimer. Mortimer was swiftly transported to London, where he was charged with treason. The accusations included usurping royal authority, embezzlement, and involvement in the alleged murder of Edward II. His trial was a formality, serving primarily as a public demonstration of Edward III's newfound authority. On the 29th of November, 1330, Mortimer was hanged at Tyburn. For a man of his rank, hanging was a deliberately humiliating punishment, typically reserved for common criminals. His body was left on display as a warning to others who might challenge the crown. Edward III's consolidation of power. Mortimer's execution marked the beginning of Edward III's personal rule, which would later be celebrated as one of the most successful in English history. Edward's reign, 1327 to 1377, saw significant military victories, including the early triumphs of the Hundred Years' War, and important constitutional developments, such as the strengthening of Parliament. By removing Mortimer, Edward demonstrated his ability to govern independently, securing the loyalty of the nobility and re-establishing the Crown's authority. Legacy and historical significance. The rise and fall of Roger Mortimer offer a compelling insight into the volatility of medieval politics. His story is a cautionary tale of ambition and overreach, illustrating the perils of seeking power without securing broad-based support. While Mortimer's actions helped end Edward II's disastrous reign, his regency alienated many of the nobles who had supported him, ultimately leading to his downfall. Mortimer's execution also reinforced the primacy of the monarchy in English governance. By asserting his authority, Edward III laid the foundation for a reign that would leave an enduring mark on English history. Conclusion. The execution of Roger Mortimer in 1330 marked a turning point in English medieval history. Mortimer's meteoric rise, fueled by his alliance with Queen Isabella, reshaped the kingdom but ultimately proved unsustainable. His regency, though initially seen as a necessary intervention, became a symbol of corruption and misrule. His fall and execution not only restored Edward III's authority but also underscored the dangers of unchecked ambition. Mortimer's legacy remains complex, reflecting both his remarkable achievements and his ultimate failure. His story serves as a vivid reminder of the challenges of power and the enduring importance of legitimacy and governance in medieval politics. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe to Medieval Chronicles 1066 for more journeys back to the Middle Ages. Stay curious.